America's national parks, vast, breathtaking landscapes of untouched beauty, offering sanctuary from the hustle and bustle of daily life. These serene havens invite millions each year to explore their majestic peaks, tranquil forests, and mysterious caves. But beneath their stunning vistas lies a darker, more mysterious side. Every year, amidst these vast expanses, curious and chilling disappearances occur that baffle even the most seasoned investigators. From the depths of Yosemite to the remote trails of the Great Smoky Mountains, stories of people vanishing without a trace continue to unsettle and mystify. Today, we delve into 4 of the most mysterious vanishings in our national parks. What secrets do these wild, rugged places hold? Are these merely accidents, or is there something more profound, more mysterious at work in these cherished but daunting terrains? Join us as we explore these questions, shedding light on the stories that may be as elusive and perplexing as the parks themselves. Stay tuned, and you might just uncover the darker secrets hidden beneath the natural beauty of America's national parks. In the serene wilderness of East Idaho, nestled amongst the dense pines and the quiet whispers of nature, lies the Timber Creek Campground. This remote location, known for its tranquility and untouched beauty, became the setting of a baffling mystery that started on a warm summer day, July 10th of 2015. The Kunz family, seeking a break from the routine of city life in Idaho Falls, decided on an impromptu trip to the great outdoors. With their 2-year-old son, Deorr Kunz Jr., affectionately called Little Man by his parents, Jessica Mitchell and Vernal Deorr Kunz Sr., the family packed up their gear for a simple weekend of fishing and relaxation. Accompanying them were Deorr's great-grandfather, Robert Walton, and a family friend, Isaac Reinwand, each bringing years of camping experience, but unaware of the looming tragedy. Upon arriving at the campground, the group set about making their temporary home. The parents busied themselves with setting up camp chairs and igniting a fire in the pit, all while laughing and sharing stories. Nearby, the creek added a soothing soundtrack to their activities. Walton, perhaps feeling the weight of his years, decided to rest inside the trailer, leaving the door open to stay connected to the group. Isaac wandered off to fish, drawn by the lure of the stream's promise. In these peaceful moments, Deorr, with his blonde shaggy hair and innocent eyes, was the epitome of a toddler's curiosity. Dressed in a camouflage jacket and blue pants, he seemed just another part of the natural tapestry, a small figure amidst the vastness of the forest. The last detail of normalcy was his attire, cowboy boots, a size too big, known to slip off his tiny feet, a crucial detail later remembered amidst the chaos. As the afternoon sun began to cast longer shadows, Jessica and Vernal informed Walton of their plan to explore the nearby area, assuming he would keep a watchful eye on Deorr. However, a critical misunderstanding unfolded. Walton thought Deorr had followed his parents and Reinwand down to the creek. The stage was set, not for a peaceful continuation of a family outing, but for a disappearance that would perplex and haunt all involved.
At some point, before we were all as a group, as we started to leave the campground, I remember all of us being together.
Whatever happened,
right.
Bob wasn't there.
Bob was at the camp, stayed at the camp.
Okay.
As far as I know, I thought baby Deorr was still behind us, and I was showing Jessica. Like when I went to go show them the fishing hole, like I went down there and showed Jessica where the fishing hole is, and I assumed that, Deorr and his dad were right behind me.
Okay.
Or just behind us. They just taking them a little bit to catch up.
And at what point did you and Deorr Sr. and Jessica split up? They went somewhere else and you went somewhere, you said earlier, right? You came down the creek closer to the campground and left them up there?
Yeah.
And
I did. I don't know, it was like 5-10 minutes. I showed them, I think it must have been 5-10 minutes.
Okay.
After I did that, I walked towards camp, and I went to another fishing hole to fish. And I was down there fishing for a while, and that's when I noticed Bob was up there on the ridge pacing back and forth. So I asked him what was going on, and he said, little Deorr is missing. And I was like, what?
The mystery deepened when, after some time, Jessica returned to check on Deorr. The casual question to her grandfather, "Where's little Deorr?" was met with confusion and the chilling realization that no one knew where the boy was. The shock that rippled through the camp was the first wave of panic that would soon engulf the entire community. This miscommunication marked the beginning of a search that would grow in scale and desperation. As minutes turned into hours without any sign of Deorr, the family's distress escalated to a full-blown emergency. The serene setting of the campground, once a place of joy and laughter for the Kunz family, had morphed into a perplexing mystery, hiding in its shadows that seemed as deep as the woods himself. As the realization that little Deorr was missing settled in, the calm of the Timber Creek campground fractured into chaos. The family's initial search, a frantic calling of Deorr's name through the thickets and trees, quickly escalated. Jessica and Vernal, panic-stricken, split up to cover more ground, their voices echoing off the dense forest canopy. Meanwhile, Robert Walton, despite his age and confusion over the boy's last known location, tried to retrace his steps, hoping to spot a glimpse of the camouflage jacket among the greens and browns of the woods.
What's the address of your emergency?
I'm actually camping in Ledworth, just outside of Ledworth.
Uh-huh.
My 2-year-old son, we can't find him.
How long has he been missing?
About an hour.
An hour?
Yeah,
Are you by water?
yes.
Do you know which campground you're in?
It's Stone Reservoir, Timber Creek.
Stone Reservoir?
Yeah, or Timber Creek.
Hold on. We need search and rescue. Jessica? Jessica?
Yeah.
What's your son's name?
Or
Okay, what is he wearing?
he was wearing cowboy boots, a blue, hair, like pajama pants, and a camel jacket. And he's got shaggy blonde hair.
Is your husband calling too?
Like, all down where we were camping at, and we can't find him at all.
Okay, we need you to stay within cell service. We've got people going on the way.
Thank you.
A quiet afternoon was soon pierced by the sounds of sirens as local law enforcement arrived. Deorr's disappearance had turned from a family concern into an official search operation. The campground became a hub of activity, with officers coordinating with volunteer search teams. The landscape, once an idyllic backdrop for a family getaway, transformed into a sprawling, ominous puzzle where every tree and bush could be hiding secrets. Search teams fanned out from the campsite, calling out for Deorr, the sound of their efforts bouncing hauntingly in the open air. As they moved through the underbrush, the rustle of leaves underfoot seemed unnaturally loud. Search dogs were brought in, their handlers guiding them through the possible paths Deorr might have wandered. The dogs sniffed diligently, their behavior watched eagerly by everyone, each change in their demeanor sparking a flicker of hope or a sinking feeling of despair. The creek, with its gentle flow and slippery banks, posed a particular worry. Divers suited up and went into the cold, clear water, feeling their way beneath the surface for any sign of the child. Above them, drones buzzed, providing aerial views of the rugged terrain, their cameras scanning the landscape for any anomaly that might be a small boy alone and afraid. As the sun began to set, the forest shadows grew longer and the temperature dropped. The light that once illuminated the campground now cast long, dark shadows, making the search efforts even more urgent. Portable lights were set up around the area, casting an eerie glow as the search continued into the night. Volunteers gathered around maps, their faces drawn and worried, discussing the next place to check. With each passing hour, the mystery of Deorr's whereabouts deepened. The initial theory that he might have simply wandered off seemed increasingly insufficient, as no trace of him was found. Speculation began to swirl among the search parties and the gathered media. Had Deorr been taken? Was there an accident that they had not yet uncovered? The lack of evidence only fueled more questions. The campground echoed with the murmur of urgent conversations and the distinct calls of searchers refusing to give up. The atmosphere was tense, with the fear of the unknown looming over the efforts of the search team, who combed through every inch of the surrounding area, driven by the hope of finding Deorr safe, but hindered by the growing realization that the forest might not give up its secrets so easily. The search for Deorr Kunz Jr. reached its most critical and intense moment nearly 4 days into the operation. The arrival of cadaver dogs, trained specifically to detect the scent of human remains, had brought a tense anticipation to the Timber Creek campground. The atmosphere thickened with a mix of hope and dread as teams prepared for what the dogs might find. As the dogs began their work, moving methodically through the dense undergrowth that surrounded the campground, all other activities seemed to pause. Searchers, family members, and law enforcement officers watched in suspense silence, each step the dogs took charged with potential significance. The handlers led their canine partners with a calm efficiency, but the gravity of what they might discover weighed heavily on everyone's mind. Then, in a moment that felt both sudden and inevitable, one of the dogs alerted strongly near a patch of brush not far from where Deorr was last seen. The dog circled, sniffed aggressively, and sat down, a signal that something was there. The handler marked the spot and called over the radio for the investigative team. Heartbeats quickened and breaths were held as the area was cordoned off, the natural sound of the forest seeming to fall away until there was nothing but the soft murmur of the creek in the distance. The search team moved in with shovels at the site. Observers held their breath, hoping for any sign that might bring closure, but also fearing what might be uncovered. As the excavation continued, the tension was palpable, with each shovel of earth turned over bringing a mix of hope and heartache. After hours of meticulous work, the lead investigator stood up, turning to address the anxious crowd of onlookers. He held up a small object for all to see. It was not the discovery everyone feared. Instead, it was a bone. But immediately, there was a twist in the tale. Preliminary examination suggested it was not human. It was likely from an animal. This revelation brought a complex flood of relief and frustration. Relief that they had not found evidence of a tragic end for Deorr, but frustration because the mystery of his disappearance remained as dense as the forest around them. This moment marked the peak of the search efforts in both scale and emotional intensity. The campground, once a place of leisure and escape, had transformed into the epicenter of an agonizing mystery. The failure to find conclusive evidence left the search teams and the family in a state of suspended despair. Questions swirled like the leaves in the chilly wind. Where could Deorr be? What had happened to this little boy whose disappearance had captured the hearts and fears of so many? As the searchers packed up their tools and the crowd began to disperse, the forest seemed to reclaim its stillness, the shadows once again just shadows, hiding nothing, or so it seemed. The case remained open, the answers elusive, and the pain of not knowing continued to haunt all who were involved. The climax of the search had passed, but the resolution of Deorr's story was yet to be found, leaving a lingering echo of the mystery in the cool mountain air. As the initial surge of activity following the inconclusive discovery by the cadaver dogs began to wane, the search for Deorr Kunz Jr. transitioned into a more subdued phase. The large teams of volunteers and the constant buzz of activity around the campground slowly dissipated, replaced by a quieter, more persistent investigation. Law enforcement continued their efforts, but with each passing day, the trail seemed to grow colder. The parents, Jessica and Vernal, faced increasing scrutiny. Their initial confusion and panic slowly turned into a deep, worrisome anxiety as they were questioned repeatedly by the police. The lack of new evidence meant that this investigation had to rely more on piecing together the family's activities and statements from the day Deorr disappeared. This meticulous process revealed inconsistencies in the timelines provided by the parents and the other adults on the trip, casting a shadow of doubt and suspicion over all their accounts. Meanwhile, private investigators hired by the family brought in their own theories and suspicions to the table, but they too found themselves mirrored in the complexities of the case. Each new theory seemed only to add more questions rather than providing answers. As they dug deeper, interviewing witnesses and re-examining evidence, their findings led to public statements that did not always align with the official police investigation, creating a confusing narrative for the public following the case. The media coverage, which had been frenzied during the initial days of the search, began to take on a more speculative tone. News reports frequently highlighted the mysterious aspects of the case, often focusing on the emotional torment of the family and the community's continued interest and involvement in finding Deorr. This sustained media attention kept the case in the public eye, but also pressured the investigators to pursue every possible lead, no matter how small or slight that it seemed. As weeks turned into months, the energy of the search dimmed. Search teams still returned to the campground periodically, driven by new tips or just a determined hope of finding something overlooked in a previous search. These efforts, however, felt more like rituals of hope than actionable leads. The community also remained engaged, holding vigils and creating memorials for Deorr. The small town was bonded by the tragedy, with residents continuing to support the family and each other, even as the mystery lingered like a heavy fog over their daily lives. Yet, beneath this communal solidarity, there were whispers, rumors that questioned every detail of the parents' version of events. This period of the investigation was marked not by the frantic activity of the initial search, but by a slow, grinding process of examination and re-examination, of waiting for a breakthrough that seemed increasingly unlikely to come. The mystery of Deorr's disappearance settled into the landscape of the campground, an unresolved shadow that lingered long after the search teams had packed up and gone. Years after Deorr Kunz Jr. vanished from the Timber Creek campground, the case remained an open wound in the community and a haunting presence in the lives of everyone involved. Despite exhaustive searches, numerous interviews, and endless speculation, no conclusive evidence had emerged to provide closure or comfort to those left behind. In the small community near Leadore, Idaho, Deorr's disappearance had become a somber legend, a story whispered among locals and a reminder of the boy who just simply vanished. The campground itself had become a site for those who followed the case or found themselves touched by the family's struggle. People sometimes left toys or flowers near the site where Deorr was last seen, a small gesture to honor his memory and express hope, however faint. For Deorr's family, particularly his grandparents, the years did little to ease the agony of not knowing. His grandmother, Trina Clegg, remained a vocal presence in the media, her face lined with grief of the years without her grandson. Each anniversary of his disappearance prompted new interviews, where she repeated her resolve never to give up hope of finding Deorr or learning what happened to him. Her home bore the marks of the missing boy, with pictures of Deorr's bright smile and somber images from the search posters. Law enforcement officials periodically reviewed the case, each new sheriff or investigator pledging to look at the evidence with fresh eyes. Yet, despite these efforts, the mystery endured, each review seemingly only to deepen the puzzle. The file on Deorr Kunz Jr. grew thicker with reports and theories, yet remained painfully thin on answers. The theories about what happened to Deorr continued to circulate: abduction, an unfortunate accident, or something darker tied to the inconsistencies in the parents' account. Online forums and social media groups dedicated to the case often buzzed with amateur sleuths debating these theories, each new post striving to shed light on the cold trails left in the wake of the investigation. The impact of the case extended beyond the immediate family and community to touch a nationwide audience. Documentaries and true crime shows revisit this story regularly, drawing in viewers with eerie details and the interviews with the family members. Each retelling serves to underscore the haunting absence of resolution and the gripping pull of this unsolved mystery. Ultimately, the story of Deorr Kunz Jr. was one of absence and enduring mystery. The landscape of the Timber Creek campground continued to bear silent witness to the unresolved fate of the little boy lost. The echoes of what might have happened to Deorr lingered in the mountain air, a haunting reminder that not all stories find their conclusion, leaving instead a lasting legacy of uncertainty and sorrow.
the search for Michael Bryson, and they are not slowing down 5 days later. KEZI 9 News.
27-year-old Michael Bryson has been missing for more than 2 months now, and the search is still very active.
The disappearance of Michael Bryson.
He went missing in 2020 after telling his parents he was going on a camping trip.
The party, or rave as it's been referred to, took place at the Hobo Campground just outside Derena in the Umpqua National Forest.
In the expanse of the Umpqua National Forest, an unsettling mystery began to unfold in early August of 2020. Michael Bryson, a 27-year-old resident of Eugene, Oregon, would soon become the central figure in a disappearance that perplexed and alarmed both his community and the authorities. Michael was well known in his hometown for his generous spirit and his love for music, which often saw him at the heart of local gatherings. His personality was as vibrant as the beats he spun as a DJ. As summer reached its peak, Michael planned to attend a week-long birthday celebration that combined the rustic charm of camping with the unrestrained joy of a music festival. The chosen venue, Hobo Campground, was nestled in the dense, lush settings of the Umpqua National Forest, a place that promised not only natural beauty, but a break from the hustle of everyday life. This trip was not just another outing, it was anticipated as a highlight of the summer, a perfect escape into nature with close friends. Before his departure, Michael visited his parents' home in Harrisburg, a small town not far from Eugene. It was here, in the comfort of familiar surroundings, that he shared the details of his upcoming adventure. His excitement was measurable. His eyes lit up as he spoke about the people he would meet and the music he would bring to life in the forest. His parents, accustomed to their son's adventurous spirit, listened intently, sharing in his enthusiasm while silently nursing the usual parental concerns that flutter about when either a child or adult ventures from home. Michael's journey from his parents' home to the Hobo Campground was uneventful, marked by the scenic drive through Oregon's picturesque landscapes. Upon arrival, he was greeted by the sight and sounds of a party already in motion. Friends and acquaintances, some he had not seen since before the world was gripped by the pandemic, welcomed him with open arms. The campground was alive with energy as tents dotted the sites, lights strung between the trees, and in the distance, the steady pulse of electronic music beckoned. As he set up his own campsite, Michael could feel the pulsing energy of the forest around him. The trees seemed to sway rhythmically with the music, and the night sky was a blanket of stars, undisturbed by city lights. The setting was idyllic, yet, as the night drew on, the isolation of the wilderness around them could not be ignored. It was in this vast, open space that the line between festivity and vulnerability would blur, setting the stage for a disappearance that would captivate and mystify all who heard about it. The mysterious elements of Michael's last known location, the remote and primitive Hobo Campground, the imposing forest, and the joyful yet chaotic nature of a rave in such a setting, all of which contributed to the eerie prelude of his story. Little did anyone know, this vibrant beginning would soon take a turn into the unknown, leaving behind nothing but questions and a haunting silence of the woods where he was last seen. As the vibrant night progressed at the Hobo Campground deep within the Umpqua National Forest, the atmosphere thumped with a mixture of music, laughter, and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. The event, a blend of a birthday celebration and a rave, had drawn a diverse crowd of attendees, all there to enjoy the escape in the wilderness. Michael Bryson, known among his friends for his charisma and DJ skills, was right at the heart of it. The evening started promisingly as Michael took to the makeshift stage to perform a DJ set that perfectly captured the spirit of this gathering. His music, a mix of vibrant beats and soulful melodies, resonated through the crowd, setting feet moving and spirits soaring. As he spun track after track, the connection between him and the audience seemed unbreakable, a shared moment of joy that defined the start of what was meant to be a memorable night. However, as the night wore on, the initial euphoria began to give way to a more chaotic undertone. The isolated setting, combined with the consumption of alcohol and other substances, started to alter the mood among the partygoers. Michael, who was at the center of this whirlwind, appeared increasingly out of sorts as the nights drew into the early morning hours. Friends later recounted seeing him agitated and restless, a contrast to the elated DJ who had owned the stage just hours earlier. Around 4 a.m., the situation took a mysterious turn. Michael abruptly left the bus that served as the central hub for the rave, stepping out into the dark forest. His departure was sudden and without any clear indication of his intent. Concerns quickly escalated when a text message surfaced from one of the attendees. Also, we may or may not have spun Michael out, and he is lost in the woods. This message suggested that Michael might have been profoundly affected by substances, enough to disorient him and impair his ability to navigate the treacherous woodland safely. The term spun out gains a chilling significance, especially when paired with the cryptic text message about his condition on the night he vanished. The Urban Dictionary definition of spun out describes a state induced by excessive use of powerful stimulants like methamphetamine or synthetic drugs, which can lead to severe paranoia, disorientation, and erratic behavior. This state is marked by symptoms such as fear of law enforcement and bizarre, repetitive behaviors. Michael's sudden and unexplained departure from the bus at the party might suggest that he was experiencing some of these intense effects. His behavior, as described by the unsettling text, implies that he could have been suffering from a severe level of distress and confusion, exacerbating his vulnerability in the wild. The dense and dark forest, combined with his possible impairment, would have significantly increased the risks that he faced, painting a grim picture of his last known hours. Given the mysterious and alarming circumstances, the search efforts could have been influenced by concerns over his mental and physical state, focusing on areas where someone in a confused and agitated state might wander. This adds a layer of urgency and complexity to the search, as rescuers might not only be looking for someone who was physically lost, but also psychologically distressed and unable to seek help effectively. The broader understanding of what it meant to be spun out helps illustrate why Michael's disappearance was particularly perplexing and worrying for those searching for him. It emphasizes the critical need for timely and thorough search and rescue efforts in such cases, where an individual's condition could drastically worsen their chances of surviving in the wilderness. This revelation sent ripples of worry through the group. A sense of unease began to permeate the crowd. Discussions about what the text could mean and whether Michael was in a state to look after himself became more frantic. The search for Michael did not fully begin until the full daylight illuminated the dense forest, revealing just how daunting the task of finding him would be. The delay in organizing a search, combined with the cryptic, last known circumstances of his departure, complicated the efforts. The forest, vast and indifferent, kept its secrets as the search teams prepared to delve into its depths. The realization of Michael Bryson's disappearance did not dawn immediately on the partygoers at the hobo campground. It was only as the night's festivities waned and the clear light of day began to break through the dense canopy that the gravity of the situation became apparent. What had started as a night of joy and connection had slipped into a scenario fraught with uncertainty and fear. As the morning unfolded, the initial inquiries into Michael's whereabouts transformed into a deep, communal concern. Friends retraced steps, and the last sighting of Michael was scrutinized, all painting a picture of his unexpected and unexplained departure. His parents, not hearing from him as expected, felt a growing unease that something was terribly wrong. The alarm was raised officially late in the day, much later than the critical initial hours following his disappearance. By this time, the chances of finding Michael quickly and safely were diminishing. His parents, struck by a profound fear that every parent dreads, rushed to the campground. Expecting a coordinated effort by the search teams, they were met instead with a disorganized and seemingly indifferent response from the local authorities and the partygoers who were still on site. The search for Michael officially began that evening, almost a full day after he was last seen. The delay was critical and detrimental. His parents, now desperate, spearheaded the efforts, organizing the search parties, mapping out the area, and coordinating with local search and rescue teams. The campground, once a site of a festivity, turned into a command center for the search operation. As the search expanded, the vastness of the Umpqua National Forest became a formidable adversary. The terrain was rough, with thick underbrush, steep ravines, and extensive ground to cover. The forest, which had so recently echoed with the sounds of music and laughter, now seemed ominously silent, as if holding its breath. Search teams called out for Michael, their voices echoing through the trees, met with only the rustle of leaves in response. The mystery of Michael's whereabouts deepened with each passing hour. Aerial drones buzzed overhead, scanning the forest floor. Horseback teams navigated the more inaccessible areas, and volunteers lined up, shoulder to shoulder, to comb through the underbrush. The community's response was a contrast to the initial casual reactions, now marked by urgency and a sense of growing dread. The fading light of each day brought the chilling realization that Michael might not be found easily, or at all. With every shadow cast by the setting sun, hope dwindled, and the forest seemed to grow larger and darker, a vast expanse hiding a mystery that no one was prepared for. The search efforts, fraught with emotional and physical exhaustion, reflected the harsh reality with each hour that passed. The likelihood of finding Michael alive and well diminished significantly. As the initial fervor of the search for Michael Bryson began to wane, the efforts transitioned into a prolonged and grueling phase. Weeks turned into months, and the dense Umpqua National Forest continued to keep its secrets, offering no clues to Michael's whereabouts. The exhaustive daily searches gradually scaled down, yet the determination of Michael's family and close friends never faltered. They continued to organize weekend searches, reaching out to experienced trackers and anyone who could help navigate the challenging terrain. The mystery of Michael's disappearance deepened with each fruitless search. Every uncovered footprint or piece of discarded clothing led to dead ends, further compounding the frustration and heartache felt by those looking for answers. The forest seemed impenetrable, a vast green expanse that swallowed up any trace of Michael. It was as if the earth had opened up and taken him, leaving behind nothing but echoes of his last known night. Inconsistencies in the stories from the last people to see Michael alive fueled various theories and speculation. Some believed he might have decided to walk away from his life, overwhelmed by undisclosed pressures. Others suspected foul play, a theory that his abrupt and uncharacteristic disappearance seemed to support. The lack of concrete evidence made every hypothesis as plausible as it was haunting. Volunteers and law enforcement combed through the area with drones that swept the skies and divers who plunged into the nearby lakes, searching for any sign that could lead to Michael. The community rallied with vigils and fundraisers, maintaining public interest and hope, keeping Michael's story alive and in the media and on social media platforms. Despite the dwindling leads, the search efforts revealed the resilience and depth of the community's commitment to finding Michael. His parents, driven by a profound need for closure, continued to push for answers. They met regularly with investigators, pored over maps, and reviewed hours of drone footage, desperate for a breakthrough. As the seasons changed, the harsh weather conditions added another layer of difficulty to the search efforts. The cold, wet months made the terrain even more treacherous, and the reduced daylight hours shortened the window for searching. Yet, through rain and cold, Michael's family and the community's resolve only seemed to strengthen, bound together by the shared sorrow and collective hope for resolution. This ongoing struggle to find Michael created a somber bond among those involved, each person driven by a mix of hope, duty, and the haunting realization that the mystery might never be solved. The forest, once a place of refuge and joy for Michael, had become a somber symbol of loss and unresolved mystery, its silence a constant reminder of all that remained unknown. Months after Michael Bryson's disappearance, the dense foliage of the Umpqua National Forest continued to hold its silence, deepening the puzzle surrounding his fate. The vibrant energy and promise that once marked Michael's presence at the Hobo campground seemed a distant memory, overshadowed by the pervasive mystery and sorrowful wait for answers. The Bryson family, supported unwaveringly by a community that refused to let Michael's story fade into obscurity, found themselves in a state of suspended grief. The forest, a sprawling entity of both beauty and menace, appeared to guard its secrets jealously, frustrating the efforts of even the most determined searchers. As the investigation continued, it transformed from a frantic search into a more methodical, albeit agonizing, quest for any piece of evidence. Michael's parents pored over every detail, revisiting the same spots repeatedly, each visit a reminder of the passage of time without resolution. They organized community meetings, kept in constant contact with detectives, and maintained a presence in the media to ensure that their son's case remained in the public eye. The lack of evidence and definitive leads prompted broader questions about the nature of disappearances in wilderness areas, drawing attention from experts in search and rescue operations, psychologists, and criminologists. Discussions about safety in remote settings, the effects of substance use in vulnerable situations, and the psychological impacts of unresolved cases filled community forums and social media discussions. Symbolically, the forest became a reminder of life's fragility and unpredictability. Each tree, path, and creek in the national forest had been scrutinized, yet the vastness of the wild seemed only to grow, as if mirroring the expanding gap between the known and the unknown. The echoing void left by Michael's absence resonated through a community, a constant call to understand, to remember, and to learn. In this lingering phase of not knowing, the Bryson family and their supporters found a certain strength in unity and purpose. They established foundations to support other families dealing with similar agonies, advocating for better resources in wilderness and search and rescue efforts, and also for the greater awareness about personal safety among partygoers and adventurers alike. As the years passed, the narrative of Michael Bryson did not conclude with clear answers, but evolved into a larger dialogue about loss, hope, and the human capacity to seek truths against dawning odds. The forest, with its undisturbed depths and silent watch over the secrets that it holds, stood as a solemn testament to the enduring search for Michael, a search that, in its essence, transcended the physical and ventured into the heart of human resilience and collective memory. The story of Michael Bryson, unresolved yet unforgettable, continues to echo through the trees, a lingering reminder of the search for truth in the shadows of uncertainty. Deorr Lueking, a 24-year-old man from Louisville, Tennessee, was known for being dependable and organized. The following day, his car was found parked at Newfound Gap, a popular spot in the mountains. Inside the car, a note with the unsettling message, "Do not look for me," sparked a wide-scale search. This cryptic message, coupled with Deorr's sudden and unexplained absence, left everyone grappling with numerous unanswered questions, shrouding his disappearance in a deep mystery. In the weeks leading up to his disappearance, Deorr's behavior began to subtly change. His roommate, Ryan, and Deorr's family noticed he was starting to drink and smoke, habits that were out of character for him. Deorr also seemed increasingly withdrawn, adding to their growing concern about his well-being. On March 15th of 2012, a routine morning took a concerning turn. Deorr failed to show up for his job at Peninsula Hospital, an unusual deviation for someone known for his punctuality and reliability. Ryan recalled the morning vividly. Deorr's alarm was blaring as he left for work, an odd occurrence since Deorr typically woke up and turned it off promptly. Compounding the worry, Deorr's computer revealed searches for the Great Smoky Mountains and a reservation at a micro-hotel in Cherokee, North Carolina. These findings were puzzling, as Deorr had not mentioned any plans to anyone that he was going to travel. This unexpected discovery intensified the mystery, leading his family and friends to question what Deorr was seeking in the remote wilderness. Upon realizing Deorr was missing, his family acted quickly. Alarmed by his unexplained absence and the concerning details on his computer, they drove overnight from Virginia to Tennessee. Their urgency was fueled by worry and the hope of finding Deorr safe. When Deorr's family reached the hotel in Cherokee, North Carolina, they encountered a room that seemed frozen in a moment of contemplation. A Bible lay open on the bed, and nearby, a bottle of liquor was found on the floor, items that hinted Deorr may have been wrestling with a tough decision. The scene was eerie, with personal belongings left as if Deorr would return at any moment, yet he was nowhere to be found. The trail led to the newfound gap, where Derek's white Ford Escape was parked in the lower lot. Inside the car, the atmosphere thickened with mystery. The family found Derek's wallet and keys, which he would typically take with him. Most striking was a note left in the vehicle with the words, "Don't look for me." This cryptic message, combined with his belongings left behind, deepened the puzzle of his disappearance and left everyone grappling with more questions than answers. The discovery of the cryptic note in Derek's car cast a shadow over the investigation into his disappearance. Written simply, the message was both stark and puzzling, leaving a chilling air of mystery. This note did not specify a recipient, which only deepened the intrigue and speculation about its intended meaning. Derek's family and the authorities were left to interpret this puzzling piece of evidence. The note suggested a desire for solitude, or perhaps an intention to vanish without a trace, yet it was ambiguous enough to keep all possibilities open. His family was torn between distress and confusion. They pondered whether Derek was signaling a need to escape life's pressures, or if it indicated something more ominous. The ambiguity of the message made it difficult for everyone involved to gauge Derek's mental state at the time that he left. Authorities considered the possibility of a planned disappearance, but the note's vague wording left them uncertain about whether Derek might have been in distress or contemplating harm to himself. This single piece of paper, left in the silence of his parked car, became a central piece of the puzzle, heavily influencing the search and rescue efforts and the theories about Derek's eventual fate. The search for Derek was an extensive and challenging operation. It involved scores of search and rescue personnel, including park rangers, volunteers, and specially trained dogs. Helicopters buzzed overhead, scanning the rugged terrain of the Great Smoky Mountains, an area known for its dense forests and steep cliffs. Despite the considerable resources deployed, the search teams faced the daunting task of covering a vast and treacherous landscape. The community around the Smokies and beyond rallied to the cause, moved by the mysterious circumstances of Derek's disappearance. Local media covered the story extensively, broadcasting Derek's photos and the details of his last known location, hoping to drum up any leads. This widespread attention helped galvanize a network of hikers and visitors to be on the lookout, expanding the eyes and the ears on the ground in the operation. For Derek's family and friends, the public's engagement brought both comfort and sorrow. The visibility of the search kept their hopes alive, yet each passing day without news served as a reminder of the grim possibilities. The emotional toll was palpable, with each media update and community search effort reigniting a mix of hope and heartache. This period was marked by a blend of community support and the stark reality of an ongoing mystery with few answers. Derek's disappearance spurred a range of theories, each reflecting the mysterious nature of his vanishing. One prominent theory suggested that Derek might have planned to disappear and live off the land. Another theory considered the possibility of foul play or an unfortunate accident. The remote and wild terrain of the Great Smoky Mountains could easily be the scene of an accidental mishap, or, less likely, a criminal act, given the circumstances surrounding the discovery of his car and belongings. Psychological factors played a significant role in the speculation. Derek's recent behavioral changes and the cryptic note left behind hinted at a troubled state of mind. This led some to ponder whether he was grappling with personal issues that might have driven him to seek solitude or even contemplate more dire actions. Comparatively, the Smoky Mountains have been the backdrop for other missing person cases that remained unsolved, adding a layer of intrigue and historical mystery to Derek's case. The similarity between cases often involved sudden disappearances, minimal clues, and vast search areas, compounding the challenges for search teams and increasing the speculation among the public and investigators alike. Derek Lueking's family has remained steadfast in their efforts to uncover the truth behind his mysterious disappearance. Determined not to let Derek's story fade into obscurity, they have launched several social media campaigns aimed at spreading awareness and gathering new information. These online efforts have kept Derek's case in the public eye, attracting tips and encouraging those who may know something to come forward. Additionally, the family has actively engaged with hikers and tourists visiting the Great Smoky Mountains. They have distributed flyers and set up information booths at key trailheads, pleading with park visitors to keep an eye out for any sign of Derek. This direct engagement has not only helped maintain a visible presence in the area, but has also enlisted the help of a community of outdoor enthusiasts who frequent the park. The ongoing search has taken a profound emotional and psychological toll on the family. The uncertainty surrounding Derek's fate weighs heavy on their hearts, with each passing day adding to a burden of not knowing. Despite this, they continue to hold on to hope, driven by love and the relentless desire for closure. Their efforts underscore a deep commitment to finding answers, fueled by the belief that someone out there holds the key to solving the mystery of Derek's disappearance. As of today, the case of Derek Lueking remains unresolved, with his whereabouts still unknown. The search efforts have dwindled over the years, but his family continues to seek answers, holding on to the hope that new information will eventually surface. The mysterious note and Derek's sudden disappearance continue to puzzle both authorities and those who knew him. The unresolved nature of his case has broader implications for national park safety and missing person investigations. It highlights the challenges faced by search and rescue operations in the vast wilderness area of the Smoky Mountain National Park, and it underscores the need for improved strategies and technologies to track and locate individuals who go missing under similar circumstances. Family members, friends, and authorities have expressed a deep need for closure, not only for their peace of mind, but also to learn from Derek's case to prevent future tragedies. The ongoing mystery serves as a reminder of the unpredictability of such incidents and the profound impact it has on all whose lives are involved. The hope remains that one day, the truth about what happened to Derek Lueking will be uncovered, bringing much-needed closure to everybody touched by his story. In the dense woods of Mount Hood National Forest, the mysterious disappearance of Gerren Kirk left many unanswered questions. On December 3rd of 2014, Gerren, a seasoned outdoorsman, ventured alone into the forest for a routine hike. Unknown to his family and friends at the time, this trip would be unlike any other. It wasn't until 2018 that hikers stumbled upon a wallet and human remains in a remote ravine, sparking a renewed interest in his case. Finally, in June of 2022, these remains were confirmed to be Gerren's, providing some closure to the haunting mystery that lingered for years. Gerren Kirk was not just an avid hiker, but a devoted father and a student with aspirations. His love for the outdoors was paralleled by his commitment to furthering his education and providing for his daughter. Despite his familiarity with the wilderness of Oregon, the forest that had been his retreat would also cloud his fate in mystery. Gerren Kirk was a 31-year-old man from Milwaukee, Oregon, with a life that balanced between his roles as a father, student, and outdoor enthusiast. He had spent several years in Arizona working in admissions for the University of Phoenix before returning to his hometown. There, he re-enrolled in school at Portland Community College and had just completed his first term of online courses with National University. Gerren was driven, aiming to complete his bachelor's degree and eventually pursue a master's. As a father, Gerren shared joint custody of his 5-year-old daughter, Gabriella. His commitment to his daughter was deep, mirroring the dedication he showed in every aspect of his life. Gerren's passion for the outdoors was well known among his friends and family. He was particularly drawn to the sprawling, rugged landscapes of Mount Hood National Forest, a place he had explored numerous times. His extensive experience in hiking and camping in these woods made him familiar with its trails and terrain. The familiarity makes his mysterious disappearance all the more perplexing, as he was well versed in the skills needed to navigate such challenging environments. On the chilly morning of December 3rd, 2014, Gerren Kirk set out for what was supposed to be a routine 3-day hike in the familiar terrains of Mount Hood. He planned to return by December 6th. Unlike his previous trips, this time Gerren did not leave a detailed itinerary with his family, a decision that would later shroud his disappearance in mystery. Gerren's absence was first noted when he failed to return home as expected. Concern grew quickly among his family members, who realized they had no specific details about his planned route or exact destinations within the vast forest. The situation escalated when his gold Pontiac Grand Am was found abandoned at Frog Lake Campground, which served as his starting point. The vehicle, parked undisturbed, offered no clues, deepening the worry for his safety. The discovery of his car prompted immediate action. Family members contacted authorities, leading to a flurry of activity as search and rescue teams prepared to scour the area. The initial reaction was a mix of urgency and confusion. Searchers faced the daunting task of piecing together Gerren's possible movements in the extensive wilderness without a clear trail to follow. This lack of information would profoundly complicate the search efforts and amplify the mystery surrounding his disappearance. The full-scale search for Gerren began on December 8th of 2014, a day after his abandoned vehicle was located at Frog Lake Campground. This delay was crucial. The time lost could have allowed for significant changes in weather or his situation. The challenge was not just a ticking clock, but also the vast and variable terrain of Mount Hood National Forest, known for its dense woods and steep ravines, which could hide any number of secrets. This included teams from Pacific Northwest Search and Rescue, Mountain Wave Emergency Communications, and various county sheriff's search and rescue squads. The community response was overwhelming, with around 170 volunteers participating, demonstrating the urgency and community concern for Gerren. The search teams employed every tool at their disposal. Sniffer dogs were brought in, attempting to trace Gerren's scent through the forest. Infrared cameras mounted on aircraft swept the area, looking for heat signatures that could indicate his presence. Despite these advanced technologies, the rugged and sprawling nature of the landscape posed a significant obstacle. Conditions during the search added to the difficulties. The area experienced unusually damp weather and temperature that hovered just above freezing, with low snow levels that should have aided visibility, but instead contributed to the harsh conditions. After an intense week of searching that tested the resolve of everyone involved, the official search was reluctantly called off on December 15th of 2014. No significant clues had been uncovered, and Gerren remained lost to the shadowy depths of the forest, leaving behind questions that the misty terrain of Mount Hood seemed unwilling to surrender. 4 years after Gerren Kirk mysteriously vanished, a group of hikers made a startling discovery in a secluded ravine only about a mile from where his journey began. Among the scattered leaves and debris, they found a wallet. Inside was Gerren's driver's license, a haunting clue that linked directly to him. Near the wallet, there were also human remains, raising both hope and heartache for those who had been waiting for any news for years. The process to confirm that these remains were indeed Gerren's was painstaking. DNA samples were collected and analyzed, a procedure that extended over several years. Finally, in June of 2022, the results confirmed the remains belonged to Gerren. This official identification brought a complex mix of relief and profound sorrow to his family and the community that had supported the search efforts. The community felt a deep sense of loss mixed with closure as the mystery of Gerren's disappearance found some form of conclusion, albeit a tragic one. The place he loved, the wilderness of Mount Hood, had kept its secret for years, only revealing it bit by bit to those who tread its paths. Confirmation of Gerren Kirk's death was met with a wave of grief from his family. They experienced a bittersweet closure, relieved to finally have answers, but devastated by the loss. The resolution brought them a painful peace, ending years of agonizing uncertainty. Reflecting on the search efforts, the family expressed gratitude toward the volunteers and agencies involved, recognizing the extensive efforts made to find Gerren. They also acknowledged the complexities and challenges of such searches, emphasizing the importance of preparation and clear communication. From this experience, key safety messages and advice have emerged for future hikers. The family, along with search agencies, strongly advocate for leaving detailed plans with someone before heading into the wilderness. They stress the importance of being prepared with proper gear and knowledge of the terrain, as well as the necessity of understanding weather conditions, which can change rapidly and unpredictably. Gerren Kirk's story is a reminder of the mysteries and dangers that can lurk in the beauty of our natural landscapes. His disappearance and the eventual discovery of his remains highlighted both the vulnerability of even the most experienced hikers and the relentless unpredictability of nature. The closure provided by the identification of his remains brought a profound sense of finality to his loved ones and the community. This tragic event underscores the critical need for preparedness and caution in wilderness adventures, ensuring that the memory of Gerren Kirk serves as a guiding lesson for all who venture into the great outdoors. As our journey through the shadowed paths of America's national parks comes to a close, we are reminded that beauty and mystery often dwell side by side, each story leaving us with more questions than answers. Thank you for joining us in exploring these puzzling disappearances. Your curiosity fuels our quest for the unknown. If you've enjoyed delving into these mysteries with us, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to A Universe of Mystery. Your support helps us bring you more stories shrouded in secrecy and intrigue. And if you feel particularly drawn to these tales, consider leaving a super comment. Any amount contributes directly to our ability to investigate and share even more bewildering stories with you. Every like, share, and super comment not only supports the channel, but also joins us together in a community captivated by the world's most profound mysteries. Stay curious and keep exploring with us. Until next time, keep the spirit of adventure alive, and perhaps you'll uncover a mystery of your own. Goodbye for now, from A Universe of Mystery.